Do you want to start off telling a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Zoe. I am 27 years old. I have two kids, 8 and 6, and my oldest was adopted by his father's family.
And what were the first thoughts in your mind when you found out you were pregnant with him?
Paralyzing fear. I had just graduated high school that spring, and I found out in a very weird way. I don't know if I ever told you this. I kept having dreams that I was in a hospital bed holding this little tomato of a kid. And a very specific nurse would come in and heat up a bottle, and there was this very beautiful bouquet of flowers next to me. And it was just so real that I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm pregnant. And I went and I took 3 pregnancy tests, and they were all negative. And so I was like, okay, cool. A couple days go by. I have the exact same dream again with the exact same tomato baby, and the exact same nurse, and the exact same flowers. Wake up again, oh my God, I have to be pregnant. I take 4 tests, all negative. So at this point, my adoptive mom, Judy, says, you're not pregnant. You've taken 7 tests. You're fine. A week later, I have the same dream again. So we go and get a blood test, and sure as fucking shit, I'm pregnant. And the world stopped. I was not in a good place mentally. I was fighting some pretty serious mental issues at the time, and I had no idea how this was going to fit in. So yeah, paralyzing fear, even though I kind of suspected it for about 2 weeks. And then it was just, all right, what the fuck are you going to do? So, yeah.
And what were your options in regard to the child?
Well, I mean, logically speaking, there's really 3 options. Keep it, adopt it, abort it. For me, abortion wasn't an option. Not necessarily because I'm against abortion. I believe that there are cases where abortion is extremely relevant, like rape cases, incest, obviously. If the mother's life is in danger, if the fetus isn't viable. Those are cases where I would consider an abortion for myself. But then, obviously, anybody's reason to get an abortion is viable. Not judgmental at all on that, but it just wasn't for me. I kept going back to the fact that I was almost aborted, and something at the last minute changed, and she said, never mind, I can't do this, let's go for the adoption route. And that stuck with me. So for me, adoption was the option, and I remember going to your parents after obviously talking with Richard and saying, hey, look, I think that we're thinking abortion, or thinking adoption. Thinking that abortion's not an option for me, and Richard's still a senior. I just got out of high school. There's really no good way that we can raise a child, so adoption is going to be our best bet. And that was when your parents made me the happiest person on earth. And they said, well, we've been praying for about 4 years about the possibility of adopting a child because we want another one. How would you feel about us? And I broke broke into tears, and they instantly were like, "I'm so sorry, we didn't mean to offend you, are you okay?" And after I was able to compose myself a little bit better, I said, "No, you don't understand, this is the best possible choice that I could have ever imagined. He's going to be with family that I know love him and want him, and you guys have already told me how you're going to be there and support me, so I know that I'm not going to just get pushed out. And I wouldn't necessarily have that option if I went through an agency and even with an open adoption to strangers, still adopt to strangers. He's going to be with family. And that's the best case scenario that could have come of all of this.
So you could say you're content with that choice.
Oh, very much so. And I'm actually, there's a very specific moment in my mind that I remember finally just being like, yeah, this is the right decision. I made the right choice. And it was when I was about 7 months pregnant. And we were over here just spending time. I was getting to know you guys, on and off. I don't remember what started it, but your mom and Richard decided to have a taser fight. And I remember sitting in the kitchen and watching your mom and Richard run around in the kitchen chasing each other with tasers and then grabbing fireplace tools as basically chairs against a lion, and just thinking, yeah, this is the family I want, because they're not perfect, but they love each other and they know not to take each other too seriously. I couldn't have chose a better family. I mean, it was through genetics, but I won the genetic lottery. I could have had 200 choices, and I think I still would have picked you guys. There's no doubt in my mind that this is where he needs to be.
So, what were the days alone with him in the hospital like after he was born?
Bittersweet. He was my perfect little tomato. He looked exactly like how he did in those dreams. He had this little green binky, and when he would cry, he would get so red that he looked like a tomato. And I couldn't help but think he was the most perfect baby boy that I've ever seen in my entire life. But I knew that I wasn't going to be able to see him for a while. And your mom kept telling me, well, you can come over whenever you want. If you want to do the breastfeeding thing, you can pump and we can see you every day. And you don't have to be away from us. You don't have to be away from him. But I knew that for me to be able to emotionally heal like I needed to, I was going to need to have a break. So your mom and I worked up a schedule. For the first year, I would see him every 3 months. And that was the second hardest decision I've ever made in my life. The first being to place him for adoption. And the second being to effectively cut ties with him temporarily. But it was probably one of the smartest decisions I could have ever made, even though your mom kept trying to get me to back out of it. We were outside of the hospital pulling up to the cars, and she said, you can change your mind and come see us whenever. Your parents were perfect through the whole thing. So yeah, it was hard. I didn't cry until the night before we were going to leave, because I was just so overwhelmed with my pure love and infatuation for that little baby boy. And then the last night it hit me that it was my last night And I think I cried for about 3 hours straight. But the nurse staff was awesome. Every single one of them knew what was going on, and every single one of them were incredibly supportive. And so they spent more time than they probably should have with me at risk of their job, and made sure that, you know, I had whatever I needed and was as comfortable as I could be. So it was rough, but those were probably the most magical days of my life.
And so how are you going to explain to Zach why you placed him up for adoption and not his younger sister, Evie?
That's a question I've been getting since I first got pregnant with Evie. And actually, since I decided to place Zach for adoption. You know, I knew that I wanted to have more kids. And I knew that this was something that would be hard to explain. I myself was the only one out of my siblings to be adopted. I have an older biological sister who wasn't, although she was also raised by my grandparents. And so I knew that question was going to come up because it came up for me. And it's just going to be as honest as I can be for what's age appropriate. For instance, you know, now, and he's 8, it's going to be, I really wasn't in a good place to have a kid. I wasn't ready. But in the 2 years between you and your sister, I did a lot of growing and a lot of work on myself, and I was in a better spot. But what it really comes down to is I was not the right mom for you. Your mom was. She was the family that you needed and the family that you deserved. And as much as I loved you, and as hard as it was, and as hard as it still is, I was not the right mom for you. I wasn't what you deserved. You deserved better than me. So, don't look sad.
So when did you find out you were adopted, and what did you think about it?
I honestly don't remember. I have pictures of me when I was 2 years old with my mom and my aunt and my uncle. Adoption was just kind of a way of life for us. I had an open adoption. My middle sister had an open adoption, and then my youngest sister was adopted from India. So it was just kind of a fact of life for us. I don't really remember too much of my childhood because of different mental traumas, but it was never a secret. It was always, you know, oh, you are blessings. You were, you know, a gift that we couldn't make ourselves, but that we were very glad that we received from somebody else. And then, you know, they were never shy about us getting to know our family. You know, mine were kind of scattered around. Most of them were, at least in Florida. They've scattered again since then. So we saw them as often as we could. But, I mean, let's see there. I met my mom for the first time when I was 2. Met my grandparents for the first time, and my sister when I was 11. Saw my mom again, my grandparents, my sister, and my aunts and uncles. I met them for the first time when I was 13. Then there was another trip at 16, and then 18, and then I became a lot closer after that. So I didn't have too much contact with them, mainly because of distance. But with Erica, my middle sister, her family was like a 45-minute drive away. So we saw them at least once a month. And we're always doing things with them, like going to the pumpkin patch or the zoo or swimming or camping. And so they were kind of like another subsection of my adopted family. So it was just kind of normal, I guess, as opposed to, I guess, what other people's experiences are like. I've had a couple friends since then that have been adopted, and it was like a big secret until they were like 8 or 10 or something, and then it was like this huge shock, and oh, we have to have an in-depth discussion about it, that like scarred them temporarily. So I don't know. I feel like, having it be just this open thing is probably better in the long run. I mean, it worked pretty well for me, all things considered, and so far it's working well for Zach. I don't know. I don't think that it should be something that you should be ashamed of, or like some secret that you need to sweep under the rug. It's just part of life.
Was there anything that we didn't cover that you'd want to explain?
I'm trying to think. The heartbreak of adoption doesn't stop once the child's born and goes home with a new family. It gets easier over time, but you still, even with an open adoption, there's stuff that you miss. You miss the first time that they roll over. You miss the first steps, the first words. You miss the first time they ride the bike on their own. Miss the first day of school. A lot of sports games are missed, and then work can get in the way, and you can just miss time. And that's something you don't really get over. It gets easier. But you don't really ever get over it. And I knew I was missing a lot. But then I had Evie, and I realized just how much I was missing. And my heart broke all over again. Not being here is hard. And while it does get easier, you never get over it. My mom still struggles with all of the things she missed. Even though it was not exactly the best situation in the long run, it was still the best situation at the time. I think the difference between her and me is the choice that she made looked picture perfect on paper, and for the brief meetings, but was really, really rough underneath. And where I lucked out is there's no picture perfect here. There is slight dysfunction, a dash of crazy, but just a house beating full of love. And it's exactly what I wanted. I didn't want picture perfect because I knew that there's no such thing. So I won't have the regret that she had and still has. She won't talk with me about my childhood or about me growing up. She just can't. She can't do it because she knows or has an idea of what I faced. But I don't have that here. I am so, so lucky to know that even through all the dysfunction, it's the perfect home for him. And so that helps. It does. It makes it easier, and it gets easier as every year goes by. But it never fully heals for us. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. It doesn't just go away, ever.
Thank you for answering these questions and being
I'm
so
sorry I made you
personal.
cry a little bit.
It's okay.